Well, let's get started. What are y'all doing this evening? Yeah, you guys ready to talk about Angular? Yes. I love the enthusiasm. The data science crowd? Actually, it's the data science crowd that I should talk to you about, but not as inviting. So, okay, so I just want to say hi and welcome you to General Assembly. My name is Stephanie. I am the event coordinator for General Assembly Los Angeles. And so that means that I try to produce and organize events, mixers, panels, and all kinds of different fireside chats that allow people to come together in the tech community, learn from one another, share resources, network, of course, and just have learning opportunities just like we do tonight to learn about AngularJS with our special guest, Justin Vencel, who will be talking about Angular 1.5, all kinds of exciting stuff. Aside from tonight's event, we have a lot of opportunities coming up to get more into tech and more into whatever you'd like, which is whether it's business development, user design. If you want to learn how to build a drone, we actually have workshops for learn how to build a drone, or whatever. So if you look on our website, ga.co, you can look at all of our boot camps, classes that are coming up, events. If you're interested in iOS, Android development, we have a web that immersive coming up as well, and some events around that. So, I just want to say hi, welcome all of you, and no further ado, I would like to introduce you to DJ, who is the founder of JavaScriptLA.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you all for coming. A lot of familiar faces. Very thankful for you guys coming again. Says a lot about our group. And also thank you for the new people who are here for the first time today. And a special thank you for Justin for coming and doing this presentation on AngularJS. I'll give him a round of applause. So I'm DJ, and I'm just going to talk really quickly about what JavaScriptLA is. In case there are a couple people here who came in from GA, so I want to know a little bit more about our group. For those of you who do know, basically our group is the meetup group, meetup.com/JavaScriptLA. We have about 1,700 people plus in the group. And then over here, what I'm encouraging everybody to do is, the meetup, we meet once a month to talk about, JavaScript or a framework or maybe some other stuff, like React, Angular. But day to day, I think that development is always happening. So it just makes sense to be part of our online community. So if you are on your phone or you're able to browse your phone or computer right now, I highly suggest going to JavaScriptLA's Slack community. The link is javascriptla.herokuapp.com, because you have to go here first to get an invite to be able to use JavaScript on Slack. So this is the address you want to go. You can come to me at the end if you don't get the link. But I want to emphasize, it's like having literally hundreds of engineers in your pocket. Okay, it's like a Steve Jobs kind of quote. But seriously, no other community can sound just as good as, Slack. When you have technical questions and you need to have answers, it is so much better to use Slack than maybe Stack Overflow or some Google search that you might be doing clumsily. So be part of our community online. It's free and it's easy, and it takes a minute to basically do it. And once you're there, if you're on Slack already, what we've decided to do is be a little creative tonight. If you have a question, I'm not going to force you to do this, but if you have a question, we'd like you to post it on Slack, just so you know that you got how to use Slack. And Justin will read questions from Slack and take those for his answers tonight. So thank you again for coming. And now I'm going to introduce Justin.
Going through here. I'm going to my slides, see if I can remember what that is. What's that? The guest Wi-Fi. So I believe it's Yellow pencil?
Yellow
Is
pencil.
that correct? All one word, lowercase? Oh, it's on the wall. Okay, cool. My name's Justin, and I work at a company called Study Mode. I was lucky enough to be able to give this talk today. It's been a little bit since I put the slide deck together, but hopefully things go by pretty slick, pretty smooth. Like DJ said, feel free to sign on here. And if there's anything I'm saying that doesn't make sense, or if you think I'm wrong, or whatever, put it in the Slack channel, and I'm more than happy to talk about things afterwards. Just more of an easy way to kind of get questions out there and just kind of say it for posterity online. So mostly what I'm going to be going over is just Angular 1.5. A little bit older, I know, with a lot of the new stuff that's come out of NGConf and all that stuff that everyone wants to do Angular 2. But we're going to go over what are some of the reasons why the Angular 1X is something like that doesn't continue going on for quite some time. Just a few of the highlights that we go over and the things that we get just by diving into Angular 1.5. So one of the most important things is security updates. You know, a lot of people kind of asking why updates to this version. One of the biggest reasons is security. There's a lot of security fixes. In 1.5, Google's actually been leveraging their own internal security team to do audits, and they found quite a few things. I don't think it's anything extremely critical, but one of those things you want to do is try and upgrade right away those critical security updates. Next one we come to is the brand new component method that Angular 1.5 introduced. What this is, they're trying to kind of simplify things and at the same way move closer to the Angular 2 syntax. So I think we're all kind of familiar, if you're not familiar, you'll become familiar with the Angular 1 syntax for directives. It's a little kind of unwieldy. It's kind of hard to learn at first. You're always wondering what's going on. So they've kind of tried to clean it up and at the same time help a migration, give you a migration path to Angular 2. So the first thing that they introduced is, you'll notice on the top, we have the old Angular 1 directive definition. And you'll see the first thing it does is it passes in a function. It accepts a function to itself. And in the new one, we're passing in just an object literally. Yes. There's no function. Yes. Wait, we got one, see that? We have one guy that's so far. Let's see who says, no, I don't like that. Second thing we have, better way for bindings here. On the top, you see we still have to do, in our function, we have to say, we have to declare an isolate scope, and then we have to have our bind to controller syntax, and inside there we say, I want input to be two-way binding. In our new one, we just have a simple key called bindings, input, two-way binding. It does the isolate scope for you behind the scenes, and it does the bind to controller behind the scenes. So already we're getting a little bit simpler. Something like called stateless components has been kind of popping up lately, where it's just a simple wrapper around something you want to display, say like a header or some kind of common component that you want to be able to reuse. Stateless components just don't have much logic at all. You'll notice that there's really no controller here. It's just, I want to pass in some data, I want to render it, or I want to be able to reuse it. In Angular 1.4 and earlier, you have to set up your isolate scope. You have to do bind to controller, you set up your bindings, then you do controller as, and you set the variable for that, and then you have to no-op a controller, and then you finally have your template. It's kind of like all this like setup just to like literally pass in two pieces of data and render. So in Angular 1.5, it cut it down quite a bit. A lot of stuff is done for you now. Obviously, here's the bindings we were just talking about, a little simpler syntax, but you'll notice that we're missing a bunch of other things. By default, now, they'll automatically do bind to controller for you and set the name as $CTRL, which is kind of like the new standard for the community. They'll automatically no-op the controller behind the scenes for you. And then we're left with really a nice, clean stateless component. So you can make these things completely reusable and just pass in your data, and it's super quick to make. So you don't have to go through and remember, okay, find control, remember all this syntax. It's really easy. Just bindings to template, done. Inheriting behavior with require. You remember before you had to have a linking function to do a lot of this stuff. You have a linking function, awesome. So now they've introduced a new require key, and in here you can just say, I want to inherit anything with the called parent component that is a parent of this particular component, and it will automatically put it on the this keyword inside of your function. So then you can just access it as this.parent, and if that parent had a foo method on it, you can easily get at it and call it this one. And before it was really convoluted, it was a little weird. If you guys have questions about this later, you can ask me about it. Honestly, unless you're doing kind of advanced things, you don't need to require that much. But it's a nice, easy syntax. And then now they've introduced one-way binding, which is kind of cool. One-way binding is like all the rage now that React and Angular 2 come out. What this will do is our new less than sign will automatically set up a watcher on the parent. So when data changes on the parent, it will be reflected inside of your component. But when data changes in your component, it will not reflect back outside, which is what this two-way one will do. So that kind of helps isolate and only pass data down. And it allows you to just isolate or the one-way binding or the one-way unit flow structure of data is usually data down, which is like this enforcing. Yeah, that's fine. It's like then sign. It's data down, then sign. Good. So this definitely helps. It's a nice, easy way, bindings, and put your less than sign. So, upgrading to Angular 2. This is, we wrote this a little while ago, and I don't think any of this has really changed. There's a dot, this is actually kind of using, this is using ES5,
Six.
no, this isn't 6.
2015.
Decorators, right? But it's actually, they're having some sugar, they have some sugar methods. You see, it's calling, there's an ng namespace that for the dot component and dot class. If it was ES6 and using decorators and stuff, you wouldn't have to use those. But this is syntactic sugar if you don't want to use decorators and use like a transpiler and all that. But you'll notice that this looks a lot like some of these other ones up here. Upgrading is not too much of a big deal, right? So we still have the template. That's pretty much the same. You have a selector, which is new in Angular 2, which says, you know, I want to bind this to that particular element in my HTML. And then these are inputs, what were bindings in these other slides are now just inputs. And it's the same thing, just give it the names. And then you obviously all components in Angular 2 have a class. This is the same thing as your controller function. So this is pretty close. It's getting a lot closer. Angular, the 1.5 is getting much closer to the Angular syntax. And that's one of the things that the Angular 2 team is trying to provide. They're trying to provide a way to go. If you stay on the 1.x track, each release will get you a little bit closer to 2, and so kind of one which goes away. Hopefully, that's the goal. All right, another kind of fun one is multi-slot transclusion. Who here knows transclusion, uses transclusion, knows transclusion here? That's okay. Transclusion is basically including text inside of, you can say that it's basically if you have an HTML tag and it's an Angular component, you're going to take the text, any text you put inside or any components put inside of those two tags, it's going to take it and it's going to basically stick it inside of your component. Typically, when you put stuff in there, it wipes it all out, and Angular takes that tag, does any markup and any kind of like processing on it, and redoes it, right? Well, transclusion is going to say, keep this data and put it inside my component. And typically, up to this point, we've only been able to do one. Like any data you put in, you can only put in one spot. You can't say I have these different pieces of data. I want to put them in these different places inside. So now we're able to do that with 1.5. So basically, you'll have some, it's called some details. This is my component class here. And you'll have what looks like a couple of other components inside, but these are actually transclusion placeholders. So we're going to have a title and a body that's going to be details. Details body, title, and details body. Passing in some text. So now, inside of our new component, you'll notice there's a new transclusion key. And it has the same title and body. And I'm mapping them to those details title, details body, as in the last slide. Details title, details body. Let's see. And then, so what this is saying is I want to take whatever's inside of each one of these and map it to this key. And now inside of our template, we can reference those by using what was ng-transclude and setting it equal to one of these keys. So now you can say, whatever comes in this one, I want you to stick it right here. And whatever comes in a body, I want you to stick it here. So you can actually pass in several pieces of data and then tell them where in your component to put them. It was not available before. Also, let's see. Default, you can put default content in here. This with these textures here. So if you didn't pass in something inside of you didn't pass in content from outside, it would by default stick this in here. Right now, and then you went before earlier, just go right. So that was a really easy way to do that. All right.
So essentially, it's like a parameter.
Multiple, yeah, kind of like multiple parameters that we will pass it in. In a way, yes. Awesome. Okay. What do we have here? Okay. We have a component with some transclusion data. I'm trying to see if I can show you how this works. So we have kind of the same thing. We have a title, body, and a description. Each of these are saying, I want you to put each of these pieces of data in a different part of the component I'm passing it into. The component we're passing it into is my details. And the actual component itself, we have the title, body, and description up there, which is details title. They're just mapping those little slots we passed into those three names, title, body, and description. And then in here, we're able to say, this is where I want title to go, this is where I want body to go, and this is where I want description to go. And then when we run that, let's see, browsers. Awesome. So here, okay, this is what it's outputting. Here's our title, our description, and body. So it's putting each of those different pieces of data in each one of those slots. Now, one thing we can do is say, for the default stuff, I was to remove and just not pass in one of those. Say I don't want to pass that in, I just want to pass it in. It will render the default text there. You see this change right here. That's because right here, I gave this a default text, and by default now they don't override it, it'll actually display that when I pass it in. And to be able to do that here, you put this little question mark in front. Let's look at that question mark as well. Putting the question mark here says, hey, title is actually optional. You have to pass it in from the outside, and if you don't, just use the default here. Now, if I was to keep that off, That's what that little question mark is there. That little question mark there says, hey, take this option. There we go. So that's what that little question mark. Awesome. Here's my little demo. Very simple. Cool. One of the other things that's kind of nice with the new the multi-slot transpositions is behind the scenes, they now lazy compile all this. So before, if you saw a bunch of NGS switches or on your page, you load the page, every one of those, even if they're not being shown, would get compiled behind the scenes, and that's expensive. So now they kind of rewritten it so that if, say, ngIf is falsy, it actually will skip the compilation until it turns true. So that's a huge speed gain now. So you get 3 lazy loading with, with 1.5. So that's a huge, actually one of the big performance gains. And just upgrading to 1.5 is you get lazy compilation quickly. This was, I think there was some crazy custom directive out there you could do it, but now it's just all built in, which is great. All right. Let's see. I think okay, cool. Lifecycle hooks. These kind of really didn't exist until 1.5, which is kind of nice. Now we have these 4 at least. They may have added some more since, I'm not sure. But basically, when your component is created by Angular, if any of these are defined by you, so you say in your function, you say this dot $sign on init, and it's just a function. If it's there and it exists, when the component's created, Angular will call it for you. So it's now a nice standard way of actually putting things that you want on instantiation. You don't need to go get some data, or you need to set some flags or something. That's now the common place to put it. Before we had to do things like make your own activate function or something, and everyone did it differently, but now there's a nice common place where we can all do it. There's also a $destroy. $post link, so that's after the linking function is run. If you do the linking for directive, this will be called, so you'd be ensured that now the linking function is running and good to go. And then finally, we have a new on changes, which is kind of cool. Works a lot more like Angular 2. Angular 2 actually has a changes hook that will be called every time something changes. The same thing will happen here. This will be called by Angular every time one of your bindings changes. So anytime something changes, that will be called, and it will pass you all the changes. So if you start using that, even alone, you're going to be much closer to the Angular 2. Here's an example of init. So all you do is you declare in the controller, you say, give it $sign on init function. This will get called by Angular whenever as soon as that, once the controller is instantiated and all the bindings have been bound, then it will call $sign on init. Let's see, Animates Swap. This kind of just is an easier way to kind of add animations really simply to your application. What you have here is it's a new directive, Animates Swap. So what's happening here is we are looking to dump out some image variable, right? So what will happen is you can set Animates Swap to that same binding. Whenever it changes, in this case, the image will change, and it will automatically add behind the scenes. It will automatically add classes to your elements that you can then use for animation. And this is kind of a standard thing. I'm not going to go over here, but you basically have enter, active, and leaving. You can put animations on each of those things, and it will automatically add those to your component whenever the binding changes. So it makes it really easy to animate a bunch of stuff. You can use it on anything. You can say, it could be a user container, and you can say, whatever the user ID changes, add those same animations. So you can do all kinds of cool animations just by watching a simple variable change. It's kind of really nice. There's a few other things. It's kind of into the weeds. They make it possible to cancel XHR requests with the $HTTP service, which is not available until now, and I'm not sure how well that actually works. This is something that observables and Angular 2 is actually kind of good, so I'll go over that. What is this? I don't know this. If you're using there's probably a lot of people who don't, if you're using Angular's actual router and not UI router, any promises in your router, in your routes will be fulfilled and placed into a $resolve property. So in your function, you just say this $resolve, and all that data will be stuck in there for you automatically. You don't have to worry about passing it into the function header or anything like that. It'll just kind of magically be there now. It's kind of like a nice convenience. But it's only available on Angular's router and not on the UI router. And a bunch of other stuff that we can look at later. But anyway, so you can find this stuff online, and I have a bunch of handy links and blog posts that you should read and learn more about what I was talking about today. And that's about it for Angular 1.5. I'm not sure if anyone, raise your hand if you asked a question online. Oh, you did. Awesome. That's cool. Maybe I'll just ask your question again, restate it, and then I can. Well, I guess I could read it. You guys online, I guess I can read it, right? Something.
In general.
Awesome. Sweet. All right, what is this? Oh. As long as the execution context is created, the scope's defined. That's the function, look at variables inside the function. All that is. Is transmission? Wait, are these two separate questions or one question?
I have two questions, entirely separate.
Cool.
So my point is that pre 1.5 vis-a-vis the security
Yes.
directive or whatever I presume the directive, prior to that inclusion, as long as the variable and the execution context is created and the scope is defined, is that not sufficient for maximum security?
That I don't know. Maybe I can go offline and maybe you can show me an example. For example,
Only
That
the
body
event that
overriding
it's nested
visual
inside
content?
of a function, therefore that should be secure enough.
I mean, it should be, and probably most of that is, but I mean, were you referring just to like the security updates in the beginning of the slides, or?
You were talking with the context of the security to either the variable or the function that's being called within the context of the scope, as I understood what that feature was for 1.5.
I don't think there was anything security related. Maybe it was just with the component instantiation stuff, or I mean, in the beginning I was just mentioning that if there are security updates that 1.5 that if you can, you should update from older versions to 1.5 and you'll get them. But all behind the scenes, like in the pilot and things like that. But maybe we can go over it later to show you exactly.
So actually that brings up another question with respect to existing pre-1.5 implementations of any function that's been written. Would you just upgrade without having to rewrite any of the functions? Would it just automatically update without any?
So I think your question is, is there a simple way to upgrade to this new component and not rewriting things?
Yes.
Basically what you're going to do is you're going to have to go directive by directive. And it's pretty easy to upgrade what you're going to have to do is remove the, you're not passing in a function anymore, you're passing in just the object literal. You'll have to change it from directive to component. But I think, other than that, you can go directive by directive. You can just upgrade one directive, put it in your code. I would say as you touch things, as you touch directives, so say, someone gets an issue, you need to fix a bug in a directive, it might be a good time to fix that bug and then update it. It's all you're doing is mostly changing the definition that's passed in, and that's all you really have to change. And I would just do it as you touch it. You don't have to go through and update your entire, you don't have to go through and update your entire application. Because just by upgrading from 1.4 to 1.5, like things like ngIf, you'll get the performance benefit because of the ways in compilation. And you don't have to do anything. You just upgrade to 1.5 and now it will compile time. So I would just, as you touch things, you can upgrade it. I'm touching this directive today. There's not a ton of benefit to redoing the whole application.
You guys can also ask questions too. Like I put this up there because sometimes people can't hear, so it's nice to have it so that people can read it also too, like if they didn't hear the question. But feel free to ask him questions if you have questions. It can even be like basic questions about AngularJS. You never touch the framework.
I had another question up there about translation, but that was the second question.
Okay. Kinda, it does do a bit of inner HTML, and that's kind of one of the reasons why. I mean, before it just, the complexity was that it could only have one slot. It was ng-transclude, and you could only have one of those. So it does, I think what it does kind of is basically an inner HTML inside. It's a little more complicated than that, but I think that's basically
It sounds as though that's a lot more than just that straight down manipulation of jQuery.
I mean, yeah, because what you can do is you can pass another directive in as a transclude spot, right? So you can say, I have a directive, let me pass another directive in there, that will get put into the slot, and then it will compile. And so, yeah, it's not just simple text. You can pass in complex.
Okay.
What's a use case for transclude?
It's a use case for transclude. One would be, well, a use case for multi-transclusion. Well, I guess here, so what did I do? I think in mine I used, in this one it would be, this is just kind of a simple one. It's being able to pass in, like, from the outside. I mean, this doesn't have to be transclusion. I guess it could be simple variables. It probably either way to do it. Maybe for multi-transclusion, something would be like, I want to pass in, like in tabs, like maybe like a tab widget or something like that, where you can pass in like a whole set of tabs into one part, that'll be your tabs, and then you can maybe pass in a whole bunch of components that go along with those tabs. So you can pass like a tab and its component in as one thing, and you pass in a bunch of those. And what it can do is take each of those and put them in the slot where it needs to go. When you click on a tab, it will show content down here. And then you click on another tab and it'll hide that and show the other content. It allows you kind of keep the tabs with the content together. You kind of can't do that without multi-transclusion. There's a couple of examples in there. I'll see if I can. I may have one of those in my slides, and if not, talk to me afterwards. I think there's a couple of examples of things.
I got another question. What are you currently using in production for like a UI library with your
Like for styles and things like that?
widgets as well?
Widgets as well. I mean, most of the stuff is just kind of off the shelf. Most of the stuff is I'm using 1.5, Angular 1.5, and then there's either Bootstrap or Foundation stuff. But as far as like off the shelf component stuff, you can use there's something called UI Bootstrap if you use Twitter Bootstrap. There's kind of a whole bunch of directives out of the box. You can go there and you can like slap in an alert, or there's a whole modal service that'll build Bootstrap compliant modals, but you're using that. You can You can do DI on them, you can do benzene injection and pass them all over your application and just use them like that. So there's a bunch of libraries like that. UI bootstraps
Have you looked into Kendall UI with Angular?
I have not, but they're pretty strong. That's Teller, who actually also does native script and a bunch of other awesome things. That's
I'm using
pretty
it,
strong.
and I'm using it, and it's the only reason why I'm actually enjoying a little bit of exploring Angular is because I'm able to use those directives.
There's that. There's also Angular. There's also Angular Material,
Yeah.
which is another really good. It's another good option. They have an awesome team on there, and they have dedicated engineers too, which is kind of cool. And there's a lot of really slow stuff.
Does Foundation have the same widgets library as what Bootstrap
I
has?
think there is for Angular 1. Someone has done it. I don't know if it's by actually Zerb, which is the company that does Foundation. I don't know if it's officially supported, but there's several libraries out there where you can
Is there?
just go and yeah.
Is that AngularJS with TypeScript? What do you think about using TypeScript to design
The question is, Angular 2 is written in TypeScript. What do I feel? How do I feel about writing, using TypeScript? It's kind of weird at first, I guess, because you know the types. But I guess what I have to say about that is, if you're going to learn Angular 2, I highly recommend you just go with TypeScript because all of the examples are going to be at first. They are planning to do TypeScript, ES6, and ES5 examples all on the site, but I'm pretty sure only TypeScript will be there for a little while because it's going to take time for the documentation to catch up. So TypeScript is just a superset of ES6, so you have ES5, and ES6 is basically more stuff on top of that, and then TypeScript is just more stuff on top of that. So you can actually put your TypeScript compiler, you can plug it in, and not use anything in TypeScript. And then you can slowly start adding a few things here and there. There's some kind of nice stuff in there. Like you can use public and private variables to scope out classes. Because right now, making private data in classes is like super pain in the butt, and no one does it because it's so hard to do it. But it's really weird. It's not built into the language yet. So they provide a public and private methods there. They do have shortcuts in your in the constructor class. So you can say like public variable name, and it will automatically declare it inside your function at compile time, which is nice. Usually you have to declare it twice, and in there you can just declare this will be public, whatever it will be for you. And then the types are going to be, they're nice now because you can get like kind of IntelliSense when you type. But they're really, really going to be nice in the near future when tooling catches up. Because what it's going to be able to do is it's going to be able to do static analysis on those types, and you're going to be able to get really, really cool things. Like you're going to be able to click on a variable in your template, it's going to go right to like the service that's the property. So, and that's only going to be available really by giving the types, structural types for class. They can analyze it and tell what variable came from where. And the last advantage of it is for big, if you're writing a huge app, multiple, with hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Actually, anything past like a couple thousand lines of code starts to get unmanageable, and the types really, really help. Because you can use some built-in, a lot of tools have built-in refactoring, where you can say, hey, rename this variable, and you can be sure that it's going to be safely renamed because it knows that this variable is actually part of this specific class because you gave it a type.
So I have one question. I'm just going to leave it anonymous right now. But somebody said a lot of this is over my head. So another guy who was sitting next to him wanted to know what AngularJS could possibly do to help him. So what would you recommend more people starting out? Like, what would be the benefit of using AngularJS over a different framework, like jQuery or whatever?
Soon you're getting into JavaScript front ends, I guess. you know, one of the nice things with Angular, I guess, is that, I mean, you know, if you're just getting into it, okay, well, I guess, first of all, if you're just getting into it and you're learning Angular, just learn Angular 2. I would just do that. It's actually a little bit easier to learn than Angular 1. Some of it has to do with some of those weird stuff we're going over with the component classes. Is that if you notice the older ones are a little bit weird, and when you get a little bit farther in, there's a lot of strangeness going on around directives. Like really a pain in the butt for a long time. You have to worry about like, you know, scope inheritance and like, you know, variable shadowing and like just weirdness that the whole API of directives is not really the best. It's you know it's not the way they really want to do it. Just want to turn it off. So they rewrote it. And it's just actually components are just everything's a component in Angular 2. It's much simpler to learn. You don't learn about all these weird directive syntaxes. There's only a few ways to do things. Everything's a component. You do the top level of your app. It's a component. That's it. You just learn how to do a component. You learn how each components interact with each other, and you pretty much learn Angular 2. So I would just, first of all, just if you're new, go to Angular 2. You know, because people who already learned Angular 1 have to kind of unlearn a bunch of stuff. Like, unlearn what $sign apply and all these other weird things that just don't apply anymore in Angular 2. And some of the advantages of it are like if you've never used like a framework that has kind of like, I guess, like two-way binding or an Angular 2 faux two-way binding, it comes in really handy. Play around with forms in Angular. It's really, actually pretty awesome. It's one of the best things you can do. You just want to mess around, make a couple forms, and see like how it magically updates the form and the data model behind the scenes. Like that's really where it comes from. I think one of the best things that really shines. I mean, so Angular 2 is mostly set up to use what React kind of started, is one way of unidirectional binding. So what Angular 1 does is basically sets up bindings between a variable and a DOM, and when one or the other one changes, it updates the other one. But it gets kind of a messy process, depending. The whole process can get very convoluted in huge, large apps. You can get to a point where you're not sure a lot of stuff changed at points. So it's too you can have a code change here, and then it gets really complicated. It's kind of hard to tell. So what React did was kind of say, okay, what's going to happen is we're going to pass data into the component, and that's all you can do. You can only pass it in, not pass it back out. So the way you get it back out is you emit an event that says, hey, this just happened, here's some data. Whoever cares about it, take care of it. So you always pass data down, component, and then when something happens, you throw an event, the event goes back up. And whoever wants to handle it, handles it. So now, you know, it makes it, that flow is always the same way, and it makes it a lot easier for large applications to kind of understand what's happening. And in Angular 2, they're doing the same they're doing a lot of the same stuff. So it's a lot of one-way data flowing. There is some explicit for forms. Two-way binding is still kind of really useful. You know, you type in a form and automatically opens a model, and then something else, you know, this form, something could happen and validation can fail, and you have to clear out the model here and close out the form thing. That's still kind of cool. So they do still allow some of that, but the one-way data binding makes it easier to grok, and it also makes it super fast. The change detection, it turns out with one-way data binding, there's some tricks you can do that make it way fast. In Angular 1, you have to kind of like keep checking everything, if something changes, you have to check it again, and then that might change something else, and let's check it again. And now with one-way data binding, it's checked once. And you can kind of guarantee that's going to be stable, and then it's kind of so it's performance and simplicity. There's one way to do it.
one-way data binding is kind of the future that comes to that.
I was actually wondering in regards to change detection, if some of those benefits are going to slowly be integrated as Angular moves up to 2, or is that all just going to be really?
I mean, I don't know as far as change detection. I mean, there are things that are happening that are going to try and backport. One of them being, say, like the component lifecycles that came from Angular 2, and we'll go back to 1. Supposedly, we keep saying there's the new routing, the component routing from Angular 2 is supposed to be backported to Angular 1 as well. So they are going to be backporting as much of the stuff as possible because basically they want to get you close. Each release they want you closer and closer to Angular 2. At some point, yeah, sure. So they will be what they can, and what is technically possible, they will be backported. There is a dedicated team on Angular 1 that is dedicated solely to keeping Angular 1X and moving forward. So we'll be getting some of it, but not everything will fit. Not everything can be snapped into the way Angular 1.
Yes. What approach do you use to go into a new company that has not used Angular before? What's your approach?
Jerry knows that one. Jerry works with me. I brought Angular over. What did I have to do? What I did personally was went rogue, and I took part of the site and just wrote it in Angular, and then I didn't put it live, but I showed them like, oh look, this is what can be done. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I got them to buy in, and then we started really throwing it over. So a lot of it is kind of, I'd say a lot of it has to do with taking initiative. Take something and show it. Showing something in person to someone means a whole lot more than like just talking to them in a meeting. Show them something. Be like, look, this took me, a couple hours of the day. Look what I did, and how easy it is. Showing something to someone is probably worth a lot more than time. So that would be my suggestion. Take a little bit extra time, and you can learn a bit, and then you also need to show something.
What were they using there before? Nothing?
Nothing. That's right. Punch cards. What? Punch cards. Yeah, there we go. I wonder what the punch cards are. Let's see. What are we using before?
There was no architecture or no framework?
No, I mean, there was architecture. I mean, there's an older system. This company's been around for 15 years. There's some legacy systems, you know. There's a lot of PHP there, there's nothing wrong with PHP, but this code base is just old. You know, any old code base in any language, if not constantly refactored and maintained, you know, it's old. It's hard to change. So part of that is trying to rewrite things, so that they're much more maintainable. And just using new tech, right? It's kind of hard to say, have an old stack and have anyone want to work with it. So it's kind of always nice to get, hey, by the way, we're using this new thing, Angular, or we're using React, or whatever. So also a selling point. Yes. Wait, I'm gonna get someone else for a little bit. Hold on. Yes.
What's the rest of your tech stack?
Yeah. What's the rest of our tech stack here?
Well, we're using an old stack along with a set framework stack. So it's a combination of PHP and Python.
There's all kinds of stuff. Elasticsearch, right? So there's some Python here and there. We have one thing written in Ruby. You know, there's stuff all over the place. So it's stats all over the place. It's an education company. We provide educational tools and study material and things like that for students.
I thought at some point you just like take the whole thing off, just scrap it, just from you, or you try to keep on back.
That's weird. That's really hard because usually you have a business, and if your business is making money, you can't just rewrite it at will, right? Because you have something that's making you money, and if you rewrite it, it's not unheard of that all of a sudden it's doing worse than it did, even though it's a new stack. Like you think, oh, it's going to do better, but you're talking about the user's finicky. If you change anything, it could possibly be positive, it could be negative. So you rewrite your whole stack, and all of a sudden you're losing money, even if you taught yourself. a lot of it's convincing business that there's a use case for it, and that they're going to get a gain. Like, you know, hey, we'll be able to move twice as fast if we rewrite this. You know, that's a business gain, right? But at the same time, it's just like I want to use different technology going forward. Probably not going to do that. Yes.
So what is, you said forms?
Yeah.
Would you say this
X site,
this type of website or application?
I mean, one of the great things about the forms I was saying before is that they work really well with form validation, like real-time form validation, so you're typing, like you're popping up errors, and it just makes it really easy. And then when you're done, you kind of have like one little object that has the data you want to send to your server and submit it. This is kind of really nice to work with, because before usually you have to either store your data somewhere in the DOM before you send it, and just kind of beat the butt. Or how do errors work, right? You have a jQuery binding in, it gets messy, right? It's all built in with Angular. You just throw a couple of directives on here, you can say, you know, this is required, and then you say, there's just a bunch of built-in directives, and it's super easy. You can say, like, hey, if the form's not valid, disable the button. It automatically happens. It's just fun. It's just
Any other, like, uses besides forms?
I mean, that's just like the intro, like, oh, this is great to do. Another one, I mean, just the whole component-driven development that kind of Angular and some of these newer apps bring is that I'm going to build reusable components where I can pass data in and all the logic's contained inside that component. You can move that component around, reuse it wherever you want. And you don't have to worry about any external code, right? Just plop it in there, and that component might even know how to go get some data. And it's kind of great. Build these, you can test them too, right? You get the component and say, hey, if I pass in this data, I expect this to happen. And you know, with a lot of other non-component-driven systems, you can write, concise, consolidated code, but really, really hard to keep it. It's always going to be something that sneaks out.
Right.
Angular contains it.
Companies already like how can we start using Angular without saying we're gonna change Angular?
Yeah.
Can we start like
Exactly. Yeah. So one kind of cool way to do it. One way to do it is find is I kind of think of it as like this. Think of like a graph or upside down like a chart, right? So the most important thing on your site is the very top, right? And from there it splits down into less important, less important, less important. So go all the way down to the bottom, find the least important page on your site, and try and incorporate it there first. And then you work your way up, right? So that page is connected to other pages, and if that works out, you know, it's pretty easy. Then you work up to other pages that touch that page, and maybe you can convert those, right? You're converting all the leaves. And then when all the leaves on one branch are converted, you convert the branch. Okay, cool, now you have one branch. Now you can do that on other leaves and kind of work your way up. And theoretically, you can convert your whole site from leaves up that way. Or maybe by that point, you can get enough buy-in. Be like, wow, that was easy. And everyone sees, the business can see, you know, the benefit. And at that point, you can sell more of a big push to new technology.
Are you good with questions? Do you want to take a little bit more, or are you done? Okay.
Yeah, so is it a good time now to start doing projects in Angular 2? Because I look back online and have a number of recommendations. Beta or was it released?
Yeah, So is it a good time to start developing in Angular 2? I'd say, well, right now Angular 2 is in release candidate, so close, really close. It's not even beta anymore. I think it depends on your timeline. If you need to release something in the next couple of weeks or month, maybe you're hesitant. But if you have a couple of months timeline, it's going to be out of release candidate. But I mean, you can definitely do. I mean, there's production apps out there already. Google's double-click page is all Angular 2 already. And there's other sites that are completely written and see, I think Glyphy is like a charting application. I think they have a full React too now as well. I think it's out there. But yeah, I mean, you can do it. Some of the things that are behind a little bit, if you need to do server-side rendering, that's a bit behind. So the Angular Universal is a bit behind the time on the timeline because they're a separate project. You know, a few other things are a little behind, but you know, I'd say depending on the exposure or when you release, I would start working on it. If you need to start the product today, I doubt you're going to release in the next month, probably, unless it's really super small. If it's super small, probably not that. Probably not too much risk, too much complexity. I'd say, yeah, it's probably, we're getting a lot of time, but yeah, new projects should be really, really strong. I mean, most of it's not going to change. The APIs are pretty stable right now, and being a release candidate means they're not going to they're going to try their very best not to make any breaking changes. So most APIs are not going to change at this point. So they're locked in, so you can be pretty confident that whatever syntax you're using now, whatever APIs you're using in there are not going to really change. Because there are people out there with instruction on. That's what release candidate is, kind of locking those down, and now it's mainly getting bug fixes together, and then like, you know, things like trying to clean up the Angular CLI, they're working on really closely and trying to get that out. So they're mostly just polishing things up right now, and then trying to get the final weight of apps down, and then. But I think it's pretty simple. Honestly. I know you've been waiting to ask a question.
It's been
Oh no, forget the past. Okay. Thank you. If you have more questions, I'll hang out a little bit.
Thank you very much, Justin. So, did you guys like this meetup today? All right, excellent. We're going to send you probably a survey like in your email if you signed in today. Just take a moment to tell us what you thought of tonight's meetup. There's a couple questions in there. I think it's like 5 maybe at most. But just tell us where you came from. We'd like to know a little bit more about you. You know, like in these meetups, a lot of it is kind of like sitting back and just like sitting in the chair and then listening passively kind of to a lecture. At the same time, so it is important to kind of observe and learn new concepts and stuff, but at the same time we want to move you. That's part of the meetup process. So take a little bit of time to check your email and just if you have the time, you know, tell us about yourself. We'd like to know who you are. And there's also an incentive if you do the survey, whatever that comes in your email, maybe a winner, you know, for the prize. Like we're giving away quotes from O'Reilly, and we're gonna have like a little raffle going on. So the first time we're kind of doing that again. So definitely check your email. And then of course, anybody needs help with Slack or just, you know, being online with the chat, let me know and I'll help you out. Otherwise, thank you for coming, and be on the lookout for the next meetup. We're going to be doing part 2 for the Angular, and we're also going to have a React meetup very soon.
I mean,